I hope you enjoyed that intro because now, as of episode 100, we're going to have intros in every episode of every video we post on this channel. Guys, it's episode 100 of the Bionicle Inspiration Series. It's time to celebrate. And how are we going to celebrate? Well, I got heaps of cool stuff planned, not only for this episode, but for the future of the channel. So, of course, the first thing, big thanks to a one ShadowGear6335 for making that fully sick and amazing intro, and well, I've thanked her before, but I'll thank her again. Also, big thanks to Molly, otherwise known as Allura, for making the Cossy logo, which of course was obviously also used in that intro. So big thanks to both of those dudes. They're awesome. Now we've got something cool to celebrate the episode 100, as well as to celebrate all future episodes of everything on the channel. We got a cool intro, but I'm getting sidetracked. It's episode 100, guys. How exciting is that? So, first off, thank you so much. I wouldn't be making 100 episodes if it weren't for you awesome people watching. I appreciate all the love that you guys send my way. I appreciate all of you watching and getting inspired. That's what this is all about. It's not about anything else. It's mainly just about you guys getting inspired, seeing some cool MOCs, and being able to keep the community alive, positive, and thriving. It's awesome. So thanks, guys, for being an awesome community, and thank you so much for watching all the videos. Always appreciate it. Thank you. So, you may be saying, well, Ben, what's up for future BIS? Like, what's going to happen after episode 100? Well, let me share a few things first before we begin. I'm actually going to do an episode 100 celebration live stream. I haven't figured out the times for that just yet, but I'm going to post a solo video separate from this very, very soon, giving the times and information and stuff that you'll need to know for that live stream. I imagine I will live stream it over... Yeah, I'll live stream it over YouTube, so you'll just have to come to YouTube at a specific time, and there'll be a live stream. Basically, my plan is to go through the 150 massive amount of submissions of MOCs that I have. And just like for an hour or two, we'll do a live stream together. I'll go through all of those MOCs, and it'll just be like a massive long version of BIS. And I'll also talk to you guys live. So what it'll probably be is me being like, cool, let's talk about this MOC, and then let's have a quick break, and I'm gonna chat with you guys. And then I'll probably just also be like, you know what I like, those Overwatch sets. And then we'll just go off subject and go back to more MOCs and back and forth. It'll be a fun time. So that'll be coming soon. Gonna have more Whip Workshop and more BIS for the Fans episodes. You know, those don't come out as regularly, but they are still alive and thriving shows on this channel. You'll be seeing more of those guys. We'll of course be covering the BioCup 2019. Obviously that's not for a little bit, but we will be covering that very soon. I'm going to have my own contest at some point soon. I haven't got any details on that I want to share just yet, but that will be coming in the near but distant future. And then another thing that I've got planned as well is doing more sort of Bionicle videos that are not specifically BIS related. So I want to be doing some like instruction Bionicle videos. Whether that's of my own MOCs or just kind of like, here's instructions for some cool hand designs, here's instructions for like head designs, masks, you know, whatever, just so that those instructions are like, cool, use them on your own stuff, go ahead, use them, yeah, that sort of thing. So that's some of the future stuff that we've got planned for the show, all exciting, and can't wait to get those out there. That'll be a cool time. And then very quickly, very, very quickly, before we begin, I wanted to share some of my favorite moments of the Bionicle Inspiration series, some of the stuff that sticks out to me when you say, Ben, what comes to mind when you say the Bionicle Inspiration series? Well, some of my favorite things of these past 100 episodes would be, well, when we covered the BioCup. That was a really fun time. I really enjoyed doing that. It was really cool to be able to kind of cover that in a fun way and kind of also help support that contest. It made that such an amazing, stellar contest with an amazing turnout. So it was awesome that BIS was able to help it in that regard. I think that was really, really cool. Also, the time when I came back, you know how I did those first few episodes of BIS and then took a massive break, and then I was like, okay, guys, I'll do it again. That was a really fun time. That was cool to kind of be like, I'm back, baby. The episode 50 celebration was really fun, getting to do a bit of stuff with Shadow Gear there, as well as just kind of putting out some fun episodes for episode 50 and celebrating that. That was really cool. Lots of love there. But probably my favorite memory, I would say, is when I met two fans of the show. One was Mr. Chamsey and the other was the Night Howler. I met them at Brickventure 2019. It was really cool to meet some people who watch the show in person. That was really, really awesome. So yeah, that's some of my favorite stuff from BIS. I would love to hear some of your favorite memories of the Bionicle Inspiration series. What in these 100 episodes has really stuck out to you? What has been your favorite memory or moments? I would love to hear them in the comments below, of course. So, 4 minutes in and I still haven't started. So we're actually going to be reviewing not 3 like we normally do, not 4, not even like a bonus mock or whatever. I got 15 mocks planned for this extra special episode. I figured we go a little bit longer because, man, it's 100 episodes. It's time to celebrate. So buckle in, ladies and gentlemen. It's time for the 100th episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series. So, the first mock that we have today is by Boogle The Dog and is called Blastophone. So this mock is really, really cool, especially for the things that it can do, which I'll show you in a minute. It looks really awesome on its own. It's just this kind of big sort of floating sci-fi mech tank kind of thing with these big guns on the top, these Gatling guns on the front, and kind of even looks like it has some eyes on the front there. It's got its own little head. It's even got these cool little sort of pop-out missiles on the side, which looks really cool. Using those studs there for missiles like that, it's pretty awesome. I like that a lot. But I also really, really like the kind of Technic panels that have been used as these fins back here. I think that just looks very, very nice. I think it looks really cool. Kind of just creates this interesting shape to the mock overall. And yeah, it just looks awesome. But you might be like, yeah, it's cool, I guess, Ben, but what else can it do? And I'd be like, well, check this out. So it has its own little individual figure, which on his own, he's pretty awesome. But he actually combines with this funky floating mech tank thing, and now he's got this awesome hard suit, mech suit, kind of booster jet thing, and he looks awesome. And I think that's so cool. It kind of reminds me of old kind of Transformers or something, how some of them could kind of power links together, and suddenly Optimus Prime has this big old lion arm, or this big old sort of guns on the back of his kind of going over his back and over his shoulders and stuff like that. I think it's super cool. I think it's awesome how he's done that. That sort of linking of the two like that looks so cool. And I think that's a great way, too, to take an already existing mock and sort of add a bit more spice to it, you know? Give it this sort of booster pack gun attachment sort of thing. Because, like we see on this mock here, it makes it look so much cooler. And it's such a fun concept that I really very rarely see on other mocks. So I think that is super, super cool. I love what he's done. It's such a unique and awesome concept. It's really, really nice to see. Let us now move on to the next mock. And this next mock is by Shadowstorm326, and is called Micros. So I think this is really, really cool, as well as really, really cute. I always like seeing those sort of really cute builds, or even just sort of the more simplistic builds like this. I really, really like it. Kind of creating a mock that's so small, but also so full of personality is awesome. You know, often I see people who sort of say like, oh, I'd love to build that, but man, I don't have that many pieces to be able to do that. Well, then think a little smaller, you know, build a mock that is of a smaller stature like this, because, you know, you look at the arms there, the arms are literally just one piece, and then the hand itself is also just one piece. But you still can get a lot of posability out of that, and you can still get a really kind of cute, fun, dynamic mock that you can kind of have on your desk and kind of play with every so often, or just take some fun pictures with your other mocks and stuff like that. It's cool, it's fun, you know? And it's that, if you really got an itch that you just want to scratch, you really want to build something, but you're like, I can't commit to a massive project right now, I don't have time, or I just don't have enough pieces. Well then, yeah, build something a little small and a little cute like this, and you can build, you can focus on really kind of capturing that kind of cute looking look on a mock, and not use too many pieces. You build something small like this. It's awesome. It's also cool that he's able to play with purple here, you know, using some of these trans purple pieces, as well as just in general using these purple pieces. You know, most of the purple on this mock is just those purple hand connectors, and then you got the 2 studs as well. Not much. But because he's thinking on that sort of smaller scale there, he's able to play with some of those more funky colors, because he doesn't use a huge amount of those pieces that come in those colors. And so that's a really great way to address using a cool color on a mock if you don't have a lot of it, is, again, you know, go a little smaller. Yeah, of course, I'd always encourage you to think big and come up with great ideas and dream big and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, sometimes you can still dream big but be building small. So here's a nice example of that. I think that's pretty cool. The next mock that we've got is Nerix, Exile of the Lost Realm, and this is a mock by the Wayward Shade. Love this mock. Love it a lot. I think it's super, super cool. One of my favorite things on this is the shoulder design, using these Cardus dragon mask things and then adding those kind of teeth under it. You know, if you don't actually look at it as kind of similar to the Cardus dragon's head, it actually just looks very nice as a sort of bulky shoulder armor that sort of kind of leads into the rest of the armor here on the torso too. So whether it's separate shoulder armor or just kind of a part of this sort of larger armor piece, it still looks cool, looks really awesome. But I like looking at it as sort of armor that's kind of been repurposed. You know, he's killed this dragon and he's shoved its skull on its on his shoulders there and kind of created this armor as a result out of it. And so he's that badass that he's just gone and killed something and is wearing it like that as this kind of trophy. And I think that's a really, really cool. It says a lot about the character and it looks really awesome. So whether or not that's intentional or not, I still think it looks really cool and is a cool concept on its own. So yeah, I like that. Also, this guy's got some pretty big hands. He's got his big old weapon there. He's just a big dude in general. You know, I think that's always something that's cool is if, you know, like we were saying before, thinking on that smaller scale. But if you do want to build on that bigger scale, want to think on that bigger scale there, you do have some cool creative liberties that you can do, like building larger weapons, using bigger hand designs, even sort of thinking outside of natural proportions too, because, you know, if you're building a sort of larger, more interesting character and you don't really want to go with typical human proportions, by all means, go ahead and kind of play with that. See if your mock looks nicer with bigger hands or looks nicer with a sort of more funky sort of interesting leg design or something like that. It's always something you consider. And like we see on this mock here, it looks awesome. We also see he's got some pistons here on the torso. That's another thing too. If you're thinking of building big, be sure to think about sort of structural integrity. And the best way to do that is just to think about where you can put in some pistons and things. You know, again, we see them on the legs here. We see them on the torso here. It's just ways for everything to sort of hold itself up, which one, you know, works really well for it just to not fall over. But also, too, you know, on the torso there, those pistons look nice aesthetically. You know, it kind of looks like it's a part of the actual mock itself. There's nothing that's necessarily... It doesn't look out of place, you know? So that, too, if you want to put pistons on your mock for structural integrity, or as well just for general aesthetic, you can, and it'll look really cool, like we see here. I actually really like how the armor sort of flows out down into this kind of waistcoat effect here. Just using those sort of larger fin wing pieces like that. It suits that really well. It creates this, really elegant, awesome-looking armor. Sort of something like you might see out of some sort of medieval fantasy game, like World of Warcraft or something. Sort of more kind of ornate, beautiful armor. Like, this guy is definitely like a high-level character or something. You know, he's worked hard for that armor. I think it's pretty cool. I like it a lot. So, this next mock is by William Burlewell, and it is called Hector the Lone Huntsman. So I think it's pretty awesome, pretty rad. Really quite like it. If we take a look here at the actual gun, we can of course see that he uses the sort of typical stud shooter piece there. So his gun actually shoots, which is awesome. You know, that piece is pretty much in every CCBS Bionicle G2 set. So it's very easy to kind of do something similar to that and have an actual sort of functioning gun like that. So that's something to consider. Also too, using the Captain Phasma cape here looks really awesome. You know, capes always do so much to a mock. You know, you take the cape off of this mock, it's cool, but you add the cape on and I don't know, it just sort of adds so much personality and kind of really helps with the overall look of the character. It's just super cool to see. I really like how much that cape does. And I've said this before in multiple episodes, you know, add a cape to your mock because man, it can do so much to the character. Another thing too I like here is the mask itself obviously looks a little bit more skeletal, but then he's also used those actual skeleton CCBS bones on the lower legs and the lower arms there. And that's super cool because he has this overall skeleton look to him, especially with the torso and all that. But also, you know, you're able to kind of make a more simplistic mock because you're using those skeletal CCBS pieces. But then, even though it's simple, it still looks really awesome because there's that nice visual unity there using all these skeleton-themed pieces. And then there's really no other way to make that sort of bare-bones skeleton look without kind of using those CCBS skeleton pieces. It's really effective and works really well, right? So do that, you know, if you want to make a mock that... it doesn't use too many pieces. You want to be a little bit more sort of ergonomical and smart with the amount of pieces that you're using, so you can sort of maximize the parts that you use for other stuff. You maybe consider doing that, grabbing some of those skeleton pieces like that and putting them on a mock so that you can, you know, not cram too much stuff on it, but still have a really effective sort of nice visual look overall. I think it's a clever idea, and I like how he's done that here. So moving on to the next mock. This one is Emperor Caseous and is by Megalodan. So one of my favorite things that immediately grabbed me with this mock is the wine glass that he's got, using a lot of these transclear dishes and this transclear beam here, pieces that aren't too hard to get. You make this awesome looking, really effective, really realistic looking wine glass, and man, it adds so much character to this mock, you know. Without that wine glass, I'm like, yeah, this guy looks cool, but with that, I'm like, oh, he's some evil schemer, like he's some bad dude, you don't want to mess with him, you know. Really, really like that. Always a really fun addition there, using some kind of additional prop or something like that, and then taking your pictures like that, because yeah, it does so much. It looks so cool. And speaking of additional kind of props and things, adding this sort of little kind of shoulder cape thing here, adding in those that little shield at the top there, makes him look even more kind of regal. You know, he's got this sort of ornate cape or something on there, which literally does nothing. It just makes him look cool. Is cool. I love that. Also, of course, using that cape that came in a more recent CCBS set, which is from the Praetorian Guard set. Really, really nice part use there. Absolutely love that. Also think this color scheme is super cool, and I can't say I've seen this color scheme before. I think it's very nice how well these colors fit together. This dark tan and this gold here, they fit very nicely. And this little interesting pop of these printed tan pieces here, that's really interesting. I kind of like that too. I think it's really funky and nice. But yeah, I love how I love this color scheme. I think it just looks awesome. Another thing I also love is just the way this torso is shaped. Kind of the way that it kind of leans back like that. Kind of gives this interesting kind of sharp look to him. And I think that kind of lends very well to creating this sort of evil, scheming kind of character. Again, I think it's very nice to see how he's kind of played with the specific parts of the body and found ways to help them communicate character. You know, we take a look at the lower legs here and even the feet here, they're very sharp. They've got these very sharp textures and angles to them, and that kind of lends itself to looking a little bit more sinister and evil, as sort of more spiky, that kind of thing. So I think that's cool. I think that's very, very nice to see how effective the character's being communicated through the individual parts of the MOC. Really, really like that. So this next MOC is called Akana and is by Toa of Ultimate Doom. I think it's really cool to see how on these legs here he's used those rubber bands to kind of connect everything like that. I think this MOC very heavily uses rubber bands too, and I think that's always really interesting. You know, you see a lot of people who kind of use rubber bands fairly sparsely, or if they do, it's more just to kind of... It's more aesthetic, I guess, to some degree. I mean, I do see people using rubber bands to actually, you know, connect things on MOCs and all that. But I love how he's done this here of, you know, it seems that Brian is really playing with techniques that don't necessarily connect, but through the use of rubber bands, they connect a lot easier and a lot more effectively, I guess. And so I think that alone is interesting, kind of playing with new ways of connecting your pieces, or at least just kind of coming up and trying out some techniques that you normally wouldn't use and just seeing what you can create out of it. You know, you never know what you might find if you try out some new techniques. You might be like, actually, you know what, I don't know why I wasn't doing this all the time in the past. These are awesome. I'm just naturally a lot better at building like this. May as well give that a go and see what I can do. So I like that. I like that just for what it stands for. I think it's cool. And always interesting to see people using rubber bands to connect stuff on MOCs. I always like that. Quite like, too, the upper legs on this MOC using those Huna masks there to sort of form the shape of the thighs. I quite like, too, because that mask naturally has that hole on the top of it that he's managed to sort of slot that in there and have other parts connecting up through that. That's a very clever technique there. I quite like how that looks. Also like, too, how just the way the torso's built there, you kind of have those two grey pistons in there. They're not necessarily pistons, they're just sort of pieces that have been placed in there, but it kind of gives it that piston look, and I like that. I think it looks really cool. It's a very nice work. So this next MOC is by Fida and is called Kupaka Shattered Glass. That, I think, is really cool on its own. The idea of sort of shattered glass universes is, like they had them with Transformers, you know, there's the idea that it's the same universe, but the good guys are the bad guys are the good guys. So I always think that's pretty cool, and, you know, you often see characters that are fairly similar, but the kind of visual look that they have is different. Maybe they're a different color scheme, or maybe they are vastly different. And so I think it's cool seeing a sort of very different interpretation of Kupaka like this. So of course, Mr. Fida here, he tends to use a lot of cut and custom and painted pieces. You know, we see some on here like the custom cloth around his neck there, that kind of cool, interesting scarf, which again, a scarf on Kupaka, that's super fitting. I don't know why I've never seen that before. That's awesome. We also see these custom hands here with all these posable fingers. Those are, you can get those 3D printed on like Shapeways and stuff, or you can get them bootleg from AliExpress and stuff like that. And then he's got this cut Liwa Nuva sword here, which looks really cool. I like how that looks when you've cut some of that off. And you've also got a bit more cloth and some other pieces here on the tip of that sword as well. And then, of course, we've got the painted Kupaka mask as well. So I think that's pretty cool to see good old Kupaka, yeah, kind of changed up a little bit, but still looking really cool. Another thing I quite like, even though this uses a lot of custom cut and painted pieces like that, I like that the kind of overall frame, for the most part, it might have a few modified things in there, but for the most part, it actually looks like it's fairly untouched. It's typical CCBS pieces that you yourself could make. And so I think that's really interesting, seeing how this kind of overall frame, which isn't too difficult to replicate on your own, it looks really, really awesome. And you get this kind of nice sort of stocky looking silhouette, and it just looks cool. But yet all these interesting things like this cape and this funky sword and this different colored mask really helps that body design pop even more. And of course, even though those things are all custom, you yourself could very easily make non-custom versions of those, you know? You could just create this really, really cool sword design. Maybe you're awesome at building swords, and so you create a sort of, pretty decent looking sort of body structure that, you know, it doesn't go too amazingly ham bone on techniques, but looks cool. But then you introduce a really interesting sword design, or you put some cool cloth that's non-custom either. That's a typical Lego cloth. Maybe wrap it around the neck like that, making this cool funky scarf, getting a nice mask on it and stuff like that. And then you've got a MOC that really pops and just looks really cool. You know, you don't necessarily need to have funky techniques and out there designs that, you know, no one's ever thought of. You can just have some interesting, nice accent points like this MOC has, whether it's custom or not, and it still looks pretty cool. So I really like what Mr. Fide has done here. Very nice. This MOC is by Nick, otherwise known as Maple Juice, and his MOC is called Geeks. I think this one's super cute. Matoran build's always a really great thing to build if you're low on parts. And I just love what he's done with this guy. This really interesting kind of claw weapon design here. I really like that. You know, it could, of course, be a weapon, but it could also, of course, just be kind of naturally how his arms look with this funky kind of claw-looking design like that. I like that. I think that's really interesting. I've not seen something like that before. I like that. He's also got this funky jetpack kind of wing design like this. I think it's awesome using these larger torso pieces here as this sort of like kind of jet booster kind of, almost sort of like a kind of robot kind of Gundam looking kind of wing design, something like that. I think that's cool. And it works quite well on this sort of smaller Matoran build too, using them as a wing like that. I think that's awesome. I think it's again a great way of using those CCBS parts in a very different but awesome way. And it's also cool how that torso is as well. You know, kind of placing those kind of leg pieces from old Bionicle there. And sort of having the connection points coming out of those for the arms. It looks cool. Oh, yeah, overall, it's this really interesting Matoran build that has some, again, like accent points, like we were talking before. There's some things that really make it pop, like those wings and the weapons and stuff like that. It's super, super cool. I like it a lot. Did I even say what this episode was about? I mean, sure, you would have read the title because it was, say, fan-submitted MOCs, but I don't think I said. These are all fan-submitted MOCs, and like I said, I'll do other fan-submitted MOCs in the future, so I know I didn't say that before, but there you go. And yeah, if you want to submit your MOCs to the show, you can do so through the email that you're currently seeing on the screen. And as you always have been able to, these MOCs will be on any episode of the show, but I will every so often periodically do these fan-submitted episodes, and those are a way to just sort of more easily work through the massive amount of submissions that I get. So if you don't see it on a traditional episode, you'll see it on this. So fret not. Or you'll see it on Bis for the Fans as well. But you already knew that, didn't you? This MOC is by Andrew Lowe and is called Makuta Gabriel. I love how he's managed to use all these castle fantasy era pieces on this, you know, whether it's the wings or the tail piece, which I can't say I've really seen that tail piece used on MOCs in the past. I'm sure other people have, but it lends itself very nicely to Bionicle stuff. So if you have some of those old dragons from those fantasy era sets, by all means use those pieces on your MOCs, because man, that looks nice here. I love too the repeated elements on this MOC, you know, whether it's those printed sort of gold and red sort of circle pieces here on the legs and the torso, or if it's again with the legs and the torso, using the sort of 8 connection pieces with all of those Exoforce arms coming off of them, whether it's in silver or in black on the legs. I think that's nice. It's just some nice visual unity. Just kind of the general look of that looks quite kind of sinister and evil, which fits a Makuta well. So I really like how that looks. I think it's really dynamic and pretty cool. Also like too, seeing those masks used there for the thighs, seeing the two of them there. It works really well. You know, people say all the time, they're like, oh, where else could I use these masks? Man, put them on the thighs or something like that. Surprisingly, a lot of them work really well using them as sort of kind of leg muscles or something like that. So I just like seeing something like that. Especially too, kind of the textures on that kind of match the Rakshi foot used there on the waist. Which is pretty cool. So this is a MOC by Luke Staton, and is his self-MOC. He didn't give me a name. But something that's cool about this is he included a bunch of different pictures of it as it's progressed throughout time. So he's always sort of stuck with this top hat steampunk look. It's always had this sort of monocle or this scope eye, or some awesome hammers and things like that. So it's cool to see how these have slowly progressed, but this final model looks awesome. You know, we take a look at the little stand that he's put on it. I think that's awesome, kind of adding in that clock and these gears and things like that, as well as creating this sort of circle look for it. That's awesome. Looks really cool. Very steampunky, but also a nice way just to kind of put a little nice vignette under the MOC. Very cool. This sword is awesome too, using some system plates and things to create that sort of sharper sort of blade on the sword there. Even sort of having little cutouts there for it, adding in those little kind of robotic-y details there to kind of continue the steampunk look on this sort of smoother area of that sword. He's used some of these Rakshi spine pieces here for the upper legs. Looks very nice, very fitting, kind of a kind of very nice texture, very much fits with her kind of leg design. He's also got this sort of trans-clear bit here on the torso, which is cool because you can kind of see the inner workings. Kind of looks like something you'd see on like a very nice expensive watch. Here you can kind of see the gears inside sometimes like that. They've got some, trans-clear bits on it, and you can see the gears inside. Very similar here, very steampunky, very, very, very cool. Also like how he's done the torso, sort of the waist here, using these repeated Exoforce arms and these different pipes and beams and things like that. Looks awesome. And the custom head here too, with the little monocle and the top hat. Very, very nice. Awesome to see how much this MOC has progressed over the years, and awesome to see the final result. It looks very, very cool. The next MOC we have is Reptilian Monarch N.A. Conda, and is by Balam Nom. Cool to see how he's used this Galador torso here. Kind of adds a bit of texture to the MOC. Looks very nice. Kind of continues that reptilian look. Very nice way of using the Galador piece like that. It's also kind of even helping form a bit of the belt there, which is cool. Very, very nice way of kind of playing with that part. Also cool too to see how he has used one of the serpent heads from one of the older Viking sets. Kind of added some funky pieces there to make that cool looking eye design. But then also adding on the bottom of that serpent head one of the Chima CCBS pieces. Was Akraga, I believe his name was, one of the big crocodile guys, using the top bit of that guy's head as the sort of bottom bit for this jaw. Very nice way of combining those two pieces like that. It really creates an awesome head. And I always think that's cool, is kind of finding ways of doing that with some of those posable jaw Lego pieces that you see in a bunch of dragons or animals or things like that. Sort of putting that with another part. You never know what that might look, and the kind of the head design that you could create with that. Yeah, I see a few people doing that, and it always works really well. So play around with some of those pieces if you've got some of them. Because like we see here, it looks awesome. Also love too the color blocking on this MOC, how all the gold is very distinct, kind of, leg armor or sort of bracelets or little sort of other additions like the crown or things like that. Yeah, it's just some nice ways of doing some color blocking on this MOC. Really like it. The next MOC that we have is by Plasma FR8G, and this MOC is of course called Plasma. This is his self MOC. Something that's cool about this MOC is it's purple. Purple's always awesome. I kind of didn't realize until I saw this MOC how easy it is to use purple on a more CCBS heavy MOC. You take a look at a lot of the old Technic sets or Bionicle sets, very few of them came with purple, man. Whereas a lot of the CCBS sets, actually a fair few of them came with purple, which is awesome. So if you want to play with purple, which is an awesome to use color, take a look at some of those CCBS sets, man, because there's a lot more purple pieces in those sets. One thing I really like about this MOC, overall it's got a lovely sort of overall structure to it. It's got a nice silhouette, but we take a look at the lower legs here. It uses a whole bunch of these Technic lift arm pieces, and it kind of helps to sort of form the basic shape of that lower leg there. And man, I always recommend doing that. Grab a whole bunch of those Technic lift arms. The smallest ones, I love the small ones, just little 1x2 Technic lift arms. Those are great, but any size of lift arm, man, if you want to sort of play around with some custom designs, getting a bunch of those lift arm pieces is always very helpful, very useful, very good idea to do so. And yeah, like we see there, it's kind of a great way that he's managed to form a kind of basic shape of that leg. It looks cool. So yeah, play around with your lift arms. Like we see on this MOC here, you get a good result out of it. The next MOC that we have here actually doesn't have a name, so I apologize, man, if this was, of course, submitted over the email, so make sure to put your name on there, otherwise I can't really have anything for this section. But this is built by Bionic Man 117. Really, really cool MOC. I love the head design on this. It's kind of really funky, almost kind of like some sort of mask or some sort of fancy ornate head design thing like that. I don't know what you call it, but it looks really, really cool. Using those ice pieces there and those horns and everything. Yeah, it looks cool, kind of like some sort of ornate dragon mask, something like that. I love it. I think it's cool. So man, funky hats on your MOCs. What a great idea. Very nicely executed on this MOC here too. I also imagine, now of course he didn't include any details on this, but I definitely think that this MOC looks a bit more female. And, a bunch of people use Rakshi heads for female MOCs just because they kind of naturally have that sort of more feminine look to them at times. So I think it's pretty cool. But also too, just kind of the hip design on this kind of naturally lends itself to looking a bit more feminine as well. So I think that's pretty cool. There's a few little pointers you could do if you are planning on making a female MOC. Of course, I have done episodes purely on that if you do want to watch those as well. But here on episode 100, I'm sure you've watched those by now. But I really dig the head design on this. Definitely my favorite part of the MOC. Really like it. This next MOC is Ultimus by Ultimus. Again, another self MOC that we'll be talking about here. And he's pretty awesome. Again, a custom painted mask, but still really cool. That is an awesome mask. And we all wish it came in some other colors, I'm sure. So nothing wrong with painting a mask if that's what you want to do. Really like the big old axe that this guy's got. If you're going to build a bigger character, definitely worth giving them a bigger, awesome weapon like a battle axe like this. Very, very cool. I like too, this MOC is very heavily CCBS, which is always awesome. Always awesome to see some more CCBS focused MOCs like this. And because this MOC is so big and because it uses so much CCBS, this guy is able to really effectively utilize a lot of the sort of larger CCBS parts, you know, like this big gold torso piece here, or even some of these Uniter Beast heads here on the thighs. You know, those parts are pretty large, and if you're building a smaller MOC, you know, those parts would look a little bit more odd if you use them on the legs, if the MOC was a bit smaller, of course. But because this MOC is so large, you're able to use those pieces and kind of carve the leg design out of them, which is super cool. So that's something to consider. If you want to build a larger MOC, take a look at some of the larger pieces that you've got, because they'll naturally just work better on the MOC, and you can do some more interesting, unique things with them that you probably couldn't have done with a smaller MOC. I like, too, the little belt design this guy's got, using the belt design that you see on the CCBS Chewbacca set that we have. It's a nice way of adding a belt to a MOC. I think it's cool. I also like, too, how effectively the Karapar armor works here on the arm design. You know, that's a very funky, unique color that came on him. You know, you didn't see that on anything else that LEGO has made, but it kind of blends very nicely with the gold pieces there. So interesting to see how you can kind of blend those two colors together. I think that's I've definitely learned something from looking at this MOC. I think it's pretty cool. Also, too, the cape there on the legs, kind of getting that kind of waist cape design. That's pretty cool, too. And finally, this is a MOC by Monarch and is called Ten Ra Haru. This guy is super, super cool. I love the head design, kind of adding those connector pieces there and kind of making it form a mouth. Kind of gives him this Optimus Prime mouth effect. I think that looks awesome. Really, really like how that looks. I also think his weapon is super cool as well, using a whole bunch of these other Technic connector pieces, various beams and washers, but also using those lightsaber pieces from the Ultra Build Star Wars sets. It's a really effective weapon, looks super cool, and uses a bunch of pieces that are, you know, it's a bit more out there. You don't necessarily see those pieces being used on a weapon, you know, on other MOCs. And I think that is really fitting for this MOC and really fitting for an awesome weapon design. So that's very, very cool. There's also some very cool repeated parts on this MOC. You know, we take a look at pretty much everywhere in this MOC. He's added a whole bunch of these different macaroni pieces, whether they're light bluish gray or black. He's added them everywhere. And it's a great way to create visual unity all throughout this MOC. Everything ties together. The MOC just looks more whole, and it's just cool. And also, too, the kind of interesting texture that you create with those repeated pieces on this Bionicle is very, very nice. It's not really something you see every day, because, man, I wish I had that many of those macaroni pieces. I have very few of them, but seeing them repeated like that, yeah, you get a very, very cool texture. Also, like the very funky out there color scheme that this MOC has. This sort of azure color, the orange, the black, the silver, and a few other things thrown in there. It's awesome. You know, a lot of these kind of Azure parts are these sort of Technic panel pieces, so a lot of these would have come in Technic sets, which is always something to consider. You know, a lot of the Technic pieces you can very easily put on a Bionicle set. So if you know, next time you're at the toy store or anywhere where you buy your Lego, be sure to take a look at some of those Technic sets, because some of those pieces might very much apply to whatever Bionicle you're planning on building. And like here with these awesome Azure color, yeah, you might be able to get a funky color on a Bionicle MOC too. So that's something to think about at least. But yeah, I think this MOC is awesome. Big, imposing look to him. Awesome design. Love the waistcoat. There's a lot to love about this guy. Fantastic job, Monarch. So that has been 15 MOCs for this extra special 100th episode of the Bionicle Inspiration series. Once again, thank you all so very much for watching the show. Thank you so much for all your support. I can't wait to make episode 100. And then in a few months, and ages from now, when we get to episode 200, look forward to celebrating with you once again. Many more bits to come. See you guys next time. Happy building. Thanks for watching.